Okay, I couldn't avoid the eye candy of this one. Nate Hayden and Blast Games, Blast City Games, have been sort of running a games as art design principle, from what I can tell. The games are good as games, but the artwork and the effort that goes into that is really, in a lot of ways, as much of the effort as the actual game design. This isn't simply simple functionality. No. In this particular case, the game itself is about a shaman leading a trip to enlightenment for a bunch of mushroom drinkers or eaters. And not only do the components capture the flavor in their own way, and you could say, all right, they just look kind of busy. Okay, there's a reason for that. The game comes with 3D glasses. Now, I doubt that anything useful can be done by trying to run the camera through them. It doesn't seem like it. But you put them on and you get a more psychedelic experience by having them on. They're not necessary for play of the game, and probably you can't actually concentrate enough on the play of the game with all. It's not like everything becomes 3D. It just becomes more colorful and more bold and odder and more psychedelic. But beyond these, and you also get something I didn't know that existed. These are basically a kaleidoscope. It doesn't look very good through here, but you can see kind of but a very, very, very simple kaleidoscope as a pair of glasses. Very, very weird stuff. So in case you're having too easy a time with the 3D glasses, you can use those. But the rules themselves are almost like a trip. And the board is a concept that in and of itself will sort of blow your mind. I'm going to actually touch on the board first, because it took me a while to figure the board out. And I'm not going to be able to give you the rules in any kind of succinct and coherent type fashion. A, because I haven't fully grasped, without playing, what's going on in the game. It seems like a path movement game where actions are triggered by that path. That's all very clear, but in terms of, like, you know, any kind of conclusions to come to about how this is all going to interact, I'm not sure. But let's start with the board. You're going to be moving down the little movement board and triggering actions for everyone largely. And then when you get to this space, the board changes. And it changes from A, B. We have letters somewhere up here in the corner. And down here in the, I don't remember what the down here, I don't know. To CDB, which is done simply by folding this. And if you haven't had to struggle with figuring out how the board works, it's not actually going to be anywhere near as amazing. And that's the truth with the rules, and I think with everything in the game, because the game represents this struggle for understanding, and in a sense that's built into the components. It's built into the rules by making things somewhat obscure and hidden secrets. Okay, so you've made your way here, and now you work your way up, and eventually you will come around and you'll hit this, which is C, E, F, and B. All right. Let's see. C. Okay. And now you keep going? Where do you go? Oh no. Because you got to get down here. I don't know if this is possible. How do you get there? So, let's see. Let's see how I got here. I got here this way. Oh, I hit here. And now I'm going to wind back this way over this part of the board. And now, once I hit down here, I have to deal with C, E, F, H, G. And we open it up again. And now we wind down here. This is like a separate little path that you can follow individually. And as you whip around, you hit H, I, J, which is actually going to be just the bottom part of the board. You'll fold this under, actually. It all folds under. And end up, and I think that's the final step as you reach your way down to here where the game will end. Okay, now that's cute and clever, and it's kind of shocking that it works. Like, you take some time figuring it out, and then you say, well, that can't possibly even work. And then, maybe the next step is to try to figure out how it works. I haven't advanced that far on my road to enlightenment. In addition to that, each player has their own little set of cards. These are going to be movement cards. Yeah, and that picture is just awesome. The others are not quite as impressive. And then each player has an identity card, which shows sort of themselves. And they're all going to be different. The rest of the deck is going to be the same, as you see. But you've got different folk drawn on lined paper. I'm not going to show all the components because I want some of it to be surprises during play. Okay. And I don't want to reshuffle. So this is going to be the action pawn, and this is what's going to move around through the board and determine where you are in this journey. And let's see what else we have. Let's take a look. This is going to be your nervous system. And that's divided into two parts, which we'll get into. There's going to be a section on that in specific. Then, what's next? Focus boards. These are the focus boards. And those are the Hour board and the Shaman Drum board. This is obviously the Shaman Drum. This is the Hour, and the Hour is going to influence these, and I think this one influences these chits, which you can get. Are these wisdom, or are these wisdom? We'll see. We'll see what the terms are for everything, because that's part of it. Everything has its own word, and then it's only referred to in the rules with a word. There's no picture, no way to make this easier, which could really piss someone off. But once I became enlightened enough about the game to realize the rules themselves are a journey and a pathway that you have to try to unravel the mysteries. I started to see something interesting here, and now immediately you could be saying, well, I don't want my games to be like that. Okay, that's fine. This is something kind of experimental here, I think. So now I'm open to trying it. So far I've trusted the couple of things that Nate sent me. This was not a review copy. This was just a gift. So far I don't think he's ever sent me anything and said, oh, I want you to review this, but I just do it because the games are so cool. Cave Evil was awesome down here. Just this, I don't know, this black metal, like, underground death magic. And then the Psycho Raiders, which was the recent Halloween edition of his of a magazine, a horror magazine he's putting out, was a good, solid, tactical representation of a horror film, and it was kind of cool. It might be a neat system for it. And he also sent this, and I have to look at it in the same light. You can't really look at these just as games, though. This one especially, I think. The game itself, I have a fear, may not be as rich. Something like Cave Evil felt really, really impressive. But I've been surprised before, so I won't turn away. And wow, the rules are even like blurring on me because of the visuals from the glasses on here. So what else do we have here? Environment cards. D. That's this set here, and these have some pretty intense pictures on them. We'll see them during play. I don't want to give everything away, as I said. The share talking cards, which are over here, those are going to be used to resolve some spaces. And there's not a lot in either deck, and in this case, this deck is shared between both kinds of spaces. What do we have? Mantra answer tokens. These are going to be rewards that you get, and you get one less than the number of players. One, two, three. Yeah, one less than the number of players. So I'm guessing that it's sort of a musical chairs type situation. I've read the rules, but like I said, they don't really settle in as to the meaning of everything. And it's not that they're written, to be purposefully obtuse. It's just they're not really written to reveal everything clearly. Maybe it's because they're just procedural and I have trouble with that, and I'm adding, my own intentions that aren't really there. You have these face tokens, which are going to be rewards that you get for succeeding in the face, the hourly competition, I guess is the word. There's paradox tokens, which are these. I think these are paradox tokens too, which are various amounts of victory points you can get from your understanding. Keep seeing what we have. Wisdom. That's L. That's these. I don't remember what they are as a resource. You have this challenge die, which is going to be a modifier to the difficulty of certain actions that occur. Place action tokens. Is that those? No. Right? No, that is these. And those have little symbols on them, and we'll see how they work. Personal path deck is this. When you go on a journey away from the rest of the group, it's going to create a little subboard for you on there. So you jump off into one of these, and then you end up exploring on your own, and you're no longer with the rest of the group. You're your own exploration. Okay. Each player is going to get their player mood deck, which is this, and this is going to direct your movement largely. It may be used in other cases. It is used in some other situations as well. And basically the number on it is the number of spaces you can move. This card starts out as a 2, but once you become advanced enough, you can choose the number of spaces you move. And when you use one of these, you discard it, and it forms a discard pile, which once you use them all, you get the discard pile back. You're also going to get a breathe token, and you'll be flipped to normal breathing, but you can advance yourself to deep breathing through the course of play. 8 large focus cubes. These are going to be used on the focus boards, I believe. And 2 personal path octagons. Huh. Red doesn't have octagons. Okay, well, that's probably just a production error. The others have them. A talking token, which is your piece here, which you'll be using when you it's placed in the awakening space in the middle of the talking board. The awakening space. So that'll be this. And now there's different symbols on them, and they don't really matter. You can choose which one you want to apply to you, but you have one of these for each color. I may only play with 4 players because of the lack of cylinders. I was considering a 4-player game anyway, just because this might be hard to follow in the full number. 2 small nervous system cubes that go on the nervous system track. This is divided into 2 sections. You put one in the red square on the intensity side. The red square. These are red squares of the nervous system, and one on the red square of the moving forward side of the track. Okay. And these will keep track of your energy levels in your nervous system energy levels, and they cannot be moved. They cannot be removed due to gameplay, and they're not considered focus cubes when you do focus actions. Okay. You'll get a reference card for the value of all the different experience. There's also these action references that we're going to have to share. And there's this, which indicates the value of these. But I think this is repeated here, isn't it? Not quite. Oh, wait. I think this is for a different benefit than that. Okay. The start player gets the first player marker, which will be this. And that's going to be used to, basically, the person who moves the pawn is the first player, and then everybody else takes an action. Some actions are complicated enough where you might have to remember who the first player is. This will also serve because I like to walk away from the table. I play a few turns and then I wander away. It'll be very helpful to me. Quite often I end up just using my lighter for that. Or some other, a die or something to mark that. The last player in the current order places a focus cube on top of the shaman drum track, and then in reverse order, each other player is going to place underneath him. So what you're going to have is a set of these cubes for each player going down here. Now these tracks are dangerous because if you're near the top, you can get shoved off if there's no room for you. Okay, and the first player goes up on the top of the hour marker. So basically, if we were playing 3 players, you would see this with a reverse order in the 2 different sides. The player with the most nervous disposition will be the starting player. That's an interesting, I'm always iffy on those. Hey, pick someone to be the starting player. The person with the longest beard, the person who was on an island last, the most nervous person. Okay. And each player gets their mood cards and gets to start playing. We talked a little bit about the board. The 3D glasses, like I said, they're not necessary for the play of the game. They might be necessary to fully experience the chaos that might be available here in your mind as you play it. Okay, so like I said, the core of the game is whoever's turn it is, or whoever's the first player, plays one of these cards, moves their piece forward that many spaces within some restrictions. These are, for example, must experience spaces with the squares around them. So you can't jump over those. If you move onto or over them, you must stop. So the first move is going to take you here no matter what. And then they experience the effect of that space. And each player generally experiences the effect of the space. One of the offside shoots of that is that whoever lands here on one of these personal paths can sort of drive their way onto them, and we'll see how that works in a bit. If you're on a personal path, you'll be moving your little octagon instead onto the path, and you'll have one marker to indicate that you're on the personal path, and another one on the personal path card on the location of that path, and we'll have to see how those play out as we get to them. They suggest not playing with the personal paths the first time, especially if you're not, familiar with more complex games. They also suggest not playing with something else. I'm throwing it all in. I figure I'm probably not going to get too many chances to experience the full thing, at least solo, with the backlog of games I have currently. So I want to get as much as I can out of it, even if it means that maybe I'm getting too much for a while. Okay. So the different actions. If the action is marked with the number 1, only the current player gets affected by it. For example, here or here. Otherwise, it's going to be a group action. Okay. A heavy action. If you land on one of these, every player experiences a loss. You lose the item shown in the action in turn order beginning with the current player. So here, it looks like you lose a person. I don't know what the symbols are yet, so we'll have to see. But that slash across there, this means you're losing a cube off of somewhere, and we'll see what the restrictions are on that. And we may not have all the examples of actions on this first board because we haven't gotten very deep into our trip yet. Like I said, these squares are must-do actions. You can't pass them by even if you have a movement token that would jump you. If I had a 2 here, I would still have to stop here. It would count only as a 1. Some must-dos are strung together in a single action, and one player, so whoever first enters here, plays all 3 of these before the turn passes. So they get multiple moves at once as first player. I don't think it has much effect though on that. Okay, if there's a letter, it's a mantra action. I don't see an example of one of them on this page here. That's the ability to understand the mantra spoken. If you have the appropriate mantra token, I believe you lose the mantra token. All right. But you get the bonuses off of it. Intense actions are these suns. These spaces are more intense experiences. Everybody takes an intense action challenge. That's where the die is going to come in. We'll see those in a bit. Shaman drum. That is this symbol. These spaces are the shaman and another player playing a primitive beat or chant to shake the eater's fragile minds from the intense moments. And that'll have its own section of the rules. The place symbol. You draw from the face-down place action tokens and put the token on the place symbol, and these are placed immediately when seen, and I think those will have an action on them, thereby randomizing the board a little bit. because you're not going to get that otherwise. Personal path action. This is a branch away from the board. You individually experience them. They have their own section of the rules. Okay. So that is the core of the action in the game. Is you play this card, you move your piece forward, everybody experiences the action usually, except in certain cases. In order to win the game, you get some experience points. These are, I think, awakening tokens. They're worth either 1 or 5. You can make change with these, as noted. Wisdom are worth 2 experience per symbol on them. Paradox are worth a half of an experience each, but then there's also some change available to be made on them. The one thing you can't make change out of at all is face tokens. You get these and they flip over and they're worth 3 experience. And you're essentially trying to gain experience, and that's the goal of the game. The player who has the most personal path cards gets a special bonus of 3 experience points. These can be tied. The person with the most total paradox gets 6 experience, and if there's a tie, they're divided among the tying players. I think, yeah, that's these chips here, and we could actually record those through play with those chips if you wish. You must collect or lose the item on the last space your talking token rests on the talking board at the end of the game. Private Paradox Challenge is conducted by any players who have a token on an intensity space. I think that's these spaces. But I don't know. Maybe it's these red ones. We shall see. In the case of the Shaman token space, a wisdom is collected instead. Yeah, I'm not sure I understand this board yet. But all things will be revealed. Oh, this is the talking board. Okay. Not this. So what are intensity and shaman token? Oh, I think those might, this I think is the shaman. But I'm not sure what the intensities are. They may be these. I'm not sure. Let's see. What a token on an intensity space. I'm not sure. Well, we'll see if that makes sense, and if it doesn't, we won't understand it. All right, we're going to take a little break because I think this game overall requires some reflection in between. Plus, I need some rest. So let's see if I can focus enough here. Although my pipe went out. That's a hard one to keep lit. I should have known better. So the nervous system board over here has 2 parts to it. This is the intensity track, and that's during an intense action, you compare your strength totals to the value of the intense moment, and the intense moment is going to be somewhat modified by this as well. The moving forward track, this one is pips that you have that you can expend to give yourself extra movement spaces. It's extra points on your card. So if your card was, like this one's a 3, you could spend a couple of these to move it up to a 5. Now it still doesn't let you bypass these spaces, but it does allow you to maybe jump over large stretches like an intensity stretch or something that you don't want to deal with for some reason. Or maybe something where you can get a bonus all to yourself, like this allows you to get the breathing bonus and no one else does. So that becomes kind of an advantageous space for you to take. And control of you know, the movement into something like that will be of some value. Now these heavy action hit everyone unless they have a 1 on them, I guess. So we'll see. Next are the 2 focus tracks. I've already kind of explained, you grow down from the top on them, and if there's no room for you, you push people off the top. Now, if you don't have enough cubes to place one and you have the opportunity to, you may, but you have to take it from somewhere else, and then people shift to go into that position. The value of those will come into effect later. Like I said, it's all very procedural in terms of, yeah, you have a definition of how you use, you know, how the focus board operates mechanically, but later when we hit certain actions, we're going to see that gets fired off. In this case, it's on the hours. Okay. Speaking of the hour, it's a face action. When you hit an hour, you hit one of these, or a face action. Whoever has the most cubes on the hour track gets the face token for that hour. As being, I don't know, the most faceful. After you take that, you're going to lose a cube closest to the top of the track out of your cubes. Now, if you're tied there, the person who's the highest up gets the face token. And that's victory points. The shaman's drum over here has a similar track. If someone lands on a shaman's drum action, now we had some of these, did we not? That's these. It's boom, boom, boom. Whoever's got the most cubes there gets 2 paradox from here. Now, 2 paradox, I think, is worth a half a point of victory, of experience. If there's no cubes at all on the hour board, then all players have to lose an item. They failed to focus. If there's no cubes on the shaman drum, then all players lose an item. Okay. The intense moment. When an intense moment happens, there's going to be 3 steps to the procedure. First, you roll the die, and you add the intensity number nearest the action. So there's an intensity number here associated with this. So this would mean it's an intense 5 action. If I got a -1, it would be a 4. That's for everyone. Then we determine the outcome. You look at your intensity track, which is this one, and see what your value is. And we got some of the numbers on it. You can interpolate the others. Any player who has at least as much intensity as the challenge earns a paradox. If you're below, you must lose an item, and those items will be lost in turn order. And then finally, everyone loses a point of nervous system, which is the human picture there. We were wondering what this is. That's losing a point of nervous system, and that is your choice of losing a point on either level of the track. If you're at the bottom of both tracks, you have to lose another item instead. When you land on a deep breathing marker, you're able to flip your deep breathing from the I'm not breathing to the I'm breathing side. What does that do for you? Okay. When a player flips over his breathing token, he's able... Okay, so what you're able to do with a breathing token is you can flip it back over to avoid a challenge. You might want to do this if, for example, you notice I can't win the intense action. you avoid all phases of that intense action. You could also avoid other challenges, though. And then you can't use that breathing again until you recharge it somehow through the regular game mechanisms. The mantras. If an action marker lands on a mantra action, and I don't see any on the board here, they're going to have something like this. All players check to see if they have the mantra. If they do, they collect the items featured. They're featured on the token. So here you'd get 2 on here. Here you'd get a wisdom, and I don't remember what that is. I can't remember the terms. Oh no. My knowledge is not great. An awakening. Okay. Mantra tokens are limited. You can own multiple of them. As there are 2 of every mantra letter per chant. I don't know what that means. A player earns the items on one mantra and discards it. Then he can still earn those letters again if he lands on the same mantra at some other point. Or if he plays a 0 counter, he can experience the 0 card, and this is why the 0 card is cool. He can experience the same space that was just experienced by the previous first player and trigger the effects there again. Now there are some exceptions to that. There are some places where you can't take advantage. On the personal paths, I think you're not allowed to. A token goes there for to cancel that out. The share action, that's going to look like a hand. I don't think there are any of those kicking around. So this is a get these things action, I think. Is there a hand on there? No. The current player must draw the top card of the share talking deck, which is over here. We don't know what those look like. We have an image here that's not very good. I don't want to show you it. Only the share portion of the card with the hand on it is going to be in effect. And it'll have 3 items shown on it. And the player whose turn it is gets to take 2 of those items and gives the other one to another player. If no one can get that other item, no one receives it. You must give it to someone if you can, though. But you get to choose the first 2. The environment action. Now we have some of these. Here's one of them. It's not always clear to me what's what. So this is one of those. This is the environment card. You draw the top card of the environment deck and you place it face up. Each player, beginning with the current player and going clockwise, must play 1 mood card from their hand. The movement number of the card will match a number on the environment card. And you get an item based on what's on the card by what you play. So again, there's some strategy there in terms of we might begin to see that certain mood values are more important for these cards, so you want to hold on to them if you see one of those ahead. We'll see how we learn through the game, though. If a player has no cards when the environment card is drawn, he gets his deck back, just like with movement. Some of the environment cards don't have a 0. If you play a 0 on one of them, you get nothing. Now, some of the numbers will cause you to lose things, too. The talking symbol. Yak, 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 yak. I don't see one of them here either. When you land on this space, ideas blossom and the conversation of them ensues. Now, this is a weird mechanism. The current player draws a card from the share talking deck. And refers only to the talking bubble icon on the card, and I can't see that here, so we'll have to see how they work. He must move his token on the talking board 1 space along the line grid toward the symbol in the talking icon. So there's going to be a symbol that matches one of the symbols on here, and you have to move to that, or towards it, by one space. Then you're affected by whatever's on this board, and it might be kind of hard to see. Maybe it's easier if I put the 3D glasses on. And you'll either get or lose something in many of those spaces, maybe all of them, I'm not sure. Now, after you do that, the player takes or loses the item shown on the grid. If there's an intensity action, the player conducts a paradox challenge on his own. That looks like an intensity with a number 4 on it. And that would be handled like this, except only one player deals with it. Okay. Now the player chooses another player to hear that idea. From the point of his last move, the current player moves his own talking token in one adjacent direction on the board. He can choose not to move his token, and then the player who hears the idea must take or lose the item shown by the moving player, or perhaps face a paradox challenge. And then the current player places his talking card These are what you use actually, the talking token, but I'm not sure. See, those tokens aren't marked here. All right, well, we'll keep reading this. Oh, wait a minute. He's got his token on here. That's what those tokens are for. Okay. When selecting a player cannot select someone who's already right. The current player places his talking card in front of the hearing player. The hearing player becomes the new current player in this action and repeats the above procedure. When selecting the player to hear, a player cannot select someone who is already heard. Anyone who has a talking card in front of themselves. Now, I don't see the talking cards. There's the one you just drew, but I don't think that you get more drawn at that point. And that's what disturbs me here. I am not sure. But essentially what I get from this is that each player talks to one other person, and it comes back around eventually so that everybody has talked to someone once. Now the problem here, of course, is, let's keep looking. See, the problem here is the last person to go presumably talks back to the first person, but that's not covered in here, and I'm not sure what happens if it gets back to the first person. Or maybe the first person doesn't get to say anything. A player cannot select himself to hear unless he's the only person in the conversation. That's pretty normal. That can be happening in a personal path. We'll try to figure that out as we hit it. I'm not sure what it's supposed to be. Fire. There are a lot of fires in the game. There's one. It's a space of rest and refocus. In player order, each player must play a mood card from their hand, and then they collect items featured next to the fire on the card played. Here, for example, I have fire, and I can get some of that stuff, or some of that, or whatever. So again, other options and values to your cards. Kind of like a CDG, you have to decide, what you need at any given time when you see something coming. If a player has no cards in his hand, he gets his whole hand back just as normal. And this is a resting period. Okay, another big thing here, the personal path. The personal path is this. These are individual episodes a player may encounter. The actions can be on the regular action path, but they're often branched off. A player can choose to move to these actions, but may also have to move to them. If a player moves the action pawn onto the action, i.e. if the pawn is, say, sitting here, you have the right to move it here. He places one of his personal path octagons onto the action and draws the top card from the personal path deck, which we'll see when they come up. They're kind of funky. He puts the second octagon on the personal action path that's going to be on the card. The first action there won't be played unless you play a 0 movement card later as your first card in the action. We have a power issue here that I may not be able to resolve while I'm holding the camera. There we go. Let's see if that keeps because we're really low. If the first action is not played, the first action is not played, the player is just prepared for the personal path. He'll have an opportunity to use the actions on the card on his next turn. And then, I think this goes back. I'm not sure. The action pawn is moved to the action adjacent to the personal path space. Yeah, I don't know. And you could actually skip this. If you were here and had a 2 movement, you could go 1, 2, and then you're there. And the group is still back here. Now, if you happen to play a 2-point card within range where you could move to one of these, you must do it if it's open. And once a personal path action on the board has an octagon, no other player can take that action. The action is considered locked until the player finishes his personal path. Now, one thing you can't do, so if you sit on an action and everybody plays a 0 there, like if you moved there and everyone else plays a 0, you can't stay there with another 0. You wouldn't want to do it with the breathing, but if something has a real bonus, you can't then get a second shot at that same action. That's actually worded poorly in the rules, but that's how I'm interpreting it. It actually says something like they can't get more than 2 actions, but that wouldn't make sense, I think. The way it's worded elsewhere, it seems to be in contradiction. Once a player has drawn a personal path, he's ventured away from the rest of the players. He must complete the personal path. His mood cards are going to move him on the personal path card itself. And he's not going to be affected by most actions on the board, and his actions aren't going to affect the other players for the most part. There are some exceptions, however, if I recall correctly. Players on personal path are counted in actions that consult the focus track. And a player on a personal track may share or be shared with, if that comes up. Whenever you must lose an item, you can choose from cubes on the focus boards. That's those. Decreasing nervous system energy, awakening tokens, paradox, wisdom, mantra tokens, personal path cards, and face tokens. But you can't trade in your face token and get any change back. If you don't have the particular item to lose, you don't lose anything. Okay, there's a jelly space somewhere. I think it's towards the end of the game. When the jelly space is reached for the remainder of the game, a player may at any time during their turn use one special action. This is a one-time action in the game. And your special actions are listed here. Add 2 focus on a track, increase your 2 nervous system energy. Avoid the effects of not having a mantra. There's effects of not having one? I think we just... Oh yeah. Yeah, we missed that. So if you don't have a mantra, you lose an item. listed on the Mantra overview card. And that, I think, is this. Trying to look. I don't know. Oh no, it's this. This is what you lose if you don't have the mantra. No, all the mantras are on there. Okay. So you can avoid the effects of not having a mantra. You can flip your breath token to deep breathing, or you can just get 2 paradox, which you kind of do if you're at the end of the game. You get some victory points there. Alright, that's me playing with the stupid cord here, trying to get power back on. In addition, all identity mood cards can be played for 0 to 3 movement, instead of just for the 2 movement that they are otherwise. And you're now aware of the deeper functions of the game. We're not going to play the 2 to 3 player game, which has some restrictions on the focus track. Because we don't want to make it complicated for us. For an easier game, they suggest removing the personal paths, the talking actions, the jelly space. None of it seems complicated enough in terms of the mechanisms in play. In terms of the interaction between it, I don't know. I really don't. This looks like such a simple game at this point, with a lot of weird stuff added to it, that it's like, I mean, I feel like I'm going to be playing Candyland right now, right? And I'm just putting my trust in Nate here that there is a good game, because so far he hasn't made anything that's just lame. But my immediate impression is, uh-oh. Here we have a listing of all the different symbols on the board. So, you know, some of them we see here. So here you get a wisdom, you know. They're fairly easy to capture. Peaceful, that was one I was looking at. Must experience. Players beginning with the current player must choose one of the 3 items. So you don't get all 3, you get a choice. And that's the kind of thing. If something's not absolutely obvious, it's worth looking up there. Okay, so now on the fire action, yeah, we have the explanation of what each of the cards gives you there. I suppose that's about it. So let's send this up, and we will start playing shortly. And the problem for me is I really like red, so like out of all the colors, red is probably the one I like the most. There's no blue, no peace here. So it's going to be hard for me. Yeah, I'm not sure I'm really bothered by that. It's going to be hard for me not to play with red just because I don't have the octagons for it. I have a couple of little red beads I could use in their place or something like that. So it's not really a big deal, but like something in my OCD says, must not play with red because that's the one that I have a problem with. That's really surprising. Okay, anyway, I'll load this up.